brave men and women of Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security law enforcement join me here today to show support for all federal law enforcement who have been under constant attack in Minneapolis for weeks now. This morning was no different. At 9:05 a.m. Central Standard Time, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien, Jose Huerta Chuma. You can see this illegal alien on the screen to my left and right. That is Jose Huerta Chuma, whose criminal history includes domestic assault to intentionally inflict bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. During this operation, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The agents attempted to disarm the individual, but he violently resisted. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, a Border Patrol agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but the subject was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 loaded magazines and no accessible ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Then, about 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement. Crowd control measures have been deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. This situation is evolving and more information is forthcoming. The officer was highly trained and had been serving as a Border Patrol agent for 8 years. The officer has extensive training as a range safety officer and less lethal officer. As mentioned, this is only the latest attack on law enforcement. Across the country, the men and women of DHS have been attacked, shot at, doxxed, had their family members threatened. And, as we have seen, more than 100 vehicle rammings over the past year against federal law enforcement. We will not allow violence against our law enforcement officers, and we need state and local help. State and local law enforcement to help us coordinate to get violent criminals off the streets. Mayor Fry and Chief O'Hare just a few minutes ago did the opposite of that by omitting the fact that the suspect had a gun and magazines full of ammunition. In what looks like a situation, again, where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. I want to reiterate what President Donald Trump, Secretary Kristi Noem, myself, Director Marcos Charles, and so many others have said time and again. If you obstruct a law enforcement officer or assault a law enforcement officer, you are in violation of the law and will be arrested. Our law enforcement officers take an oath to protect the public. We go to work every day to protect our friends, our neighbors, and our fellow citizens. The fact of the matter is that the law does not enforce itself. It takes men and women who are willing to risk their lives to enforce it. The men and women of CBP and ICE, law enforcement, are highly trained professionals who love this country and do this work because they want to leave their kids and their grandkids a country that's safe and secure. Questions?
All right. One question. First question, when did agents learn that he had a gun, and did he ever brandish that weapon at agents?
Allie, this situation, again, is evolving. This situation is under investigation. Those facts will come to light. This particular incident is being investigated just like we investigate other similar incidents like we've done over the past several years. It's in the hands of professionals. Those facts will come to light.
All right, going on to the next question.
So, did he have an additional gun, or was the gun moved from the scene? And I watched the video from start to finish of that woman who was wearing the red jacket, and it doesn't seem like he pulled the weapon at any point. So, does the account come from the agent? Did they say that he pulled the gun before, during, after? When does the gun come out?
Again, this situation's evolving. This is under investigation. Those facts will come to light, but let's take a look at the gun. You can see the gun here on the screen there that individual possessed. It appears to be a semi-automatic, high-capacity type, possibly a Sig Sauer 9mm.
All right, no more questions. Sorry, no more questions, sir.
Wait, Commander, where was the gun?
Exactly was the gun
Where was the gun?
You have a picture in it.
Thank you all for being here. I'll have a short statement, then I'll turn it over to Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson to update the situation, joined here by Hennepin County Sheriff Witt, State Patrol Colonel, and General Mankey, the Adjutant General of the Minnesota National Guard. Well, as I said last week, this federal occupation of Minnesota long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of our state. And today that campaign claimed another life. I've seen the videos from several angles, and it's sickening. But I have a strong statement here for our federal government. Minnesota's justice system will have the last word on this. It must have the last word. As I told the White House in no uncertain terms this morning, the federal government cannot be trusted to lead this investigation. The state will handle it, period. Let me say something else, and this is critically important. All of us understand what happened this morning and the tragedy of it, and my deepest sympathies to the family of a 37-year-old Minnesota resident, a lawful firearm concealed permit carrier, something that I've been lectured to by Republicans for decades. That is not only your right, it's your duty. We know that the potential to further inflame tensions is high. And to Minnesotans, there's a difference. We want calm and peace and normalcy back to our lives. They want chaos. We cannot and we will not give them what they want by meeting violence with violence. Minnesota and our local law enforcement, as you have seen, have done everything possible to de-escalate. Local media has reported extensively on the cooperation to de-escalate this situation. Donald Trump, I call on you once again. Remove this force from Minnesota. They are sowing chaos and violence. We've seen deadly violence from federal agents again and again and again. But in contrast to that, on these frozen streets, what you witnessed yesterday was the best of Minnesota, peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights. And I attended in the church basement hundreds of Minnesotans from all faith packing care packages for families that have been ripped apart. Despite the horrific acts by this federal government, Minnesotans are standing up for the rule of law. They're protesting loudly and urgently, but peacefully. It must stay that way, Minnesota. Minnesotans are witnessing, and we're creating a log of evidence for the future prosecution of ICE agents and officials responsible for this. They're helping their neighbors. They're walking their kids to school. They're feeding families. I salute their courage and their restraint, and I call on all Americans to see the decency that this state is exhibiting and the horrific cruelty, unprofessional, absolute abomination that is passing for what these ICE agents are doing on our streets. They think they can provoke us into abandoning our values. Well, they're dead wrong. We'll keep the peace, we'll secure the justice with our neighbors, and we'll see this occupation end. Minnesotans and Minnesota law enforcement that continuously is being denigrated by this administration will continue to be the adults in the room, the professionals in the room, the decent human beings in the room that will keep the peace. With this, I'd like to turn it over to Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson to update you on the situation as we know it.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Bob Jacobson, Commissioner of Public Safety for the Department of Public Safety, and again, it's my honor to serve in that position. A man was shot and killed this morning in Minneapolis. I want to pause and remember what cannot get lost in this moment. A man died. His family and friends are feeling unimaginable heartbreak and trauma. And I know Minnesotans and I know our community will rally around this man's family and friends to support him. I also understand clearly that people are upset. They're scared, they're confused, and I want to assure you that this state's public safety officials and our local law enforcement partners are doing everything in our power to get answers, to help return a sense of normalcy back to our communities. You have the right to demonstrate peacefully. We recognize that demonstrations are often driven by strong emotions, beliefs, and a desire to be heard. But please, please remain peaceful. And I want to say it again that because it is important and it is critical. Peacefully demonstrate. By doing so, you help local authorities to get answers. You help us to do our investigations. By remaining peaceful, you help ensure nobody else may be killed or injured. The thousands and thousands of people who gathered yesterday in Minneapolis proved that Minnesotans can make their voices heard peacefully, and they can do so without violence, and they can do so without destruction. And state resources are available and ready to support our local law enforcement partners as requested. And those resources include the Minnesota State Patrol, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and the Minnesota National Guard. With that, we'll stand for questions.
Governor, you've made this request before. Is there any reason to believe that it will be answered differently? Have you had any conversations with the president